So welcome back, people. Now 12:35, and we're aiming to keep on tracks. So our next session is with Simon de Cintra, who has joined us, and Simon is going to be speaking about mind the gap. So over to you, Simon. Thank you.
So, hello and welcome to Mind the Gap. How to shorten the distance between you, your audience, so your message makes the impact your content deserves. I want the need to too much, too much. Yeah, probably too much. I get that a lot. Interestingly, in terms of delivery, you could argue in some of the regions that we work with that that might not be too much, because our style and how we deliver it is actually a part of how we limit the gap between us and our audience. And what I'd love to do for you today, without being too much and hopefully not too little either, is just share a little bit in our world at Eye Opener of how we coach people to narrow the gap between us and our audience. And that's really what this next 20 minutes is all about. So, how do we do that? So, in terms of the how we do that, I just want to talk very briefly about a handful of things that help us. The level of trust. So, what's the level of trust between us and our target, the person that we're trying to influence and persuade, or even if we're giving a presentation, our audience? The other thing I want to talk about is the readiness to receive the message. Because very often we get very excited about the point that we want to make in our own heads, and then we rush to the people we want to persuade. And you probably notice sometimes they're just not there. And that can create a gap as well. Intention versus impact, when we look at that, that's all about we put all the hard work into creating our content, but sometimes we miss out thinking about the effect that we want to have on the audience. Why would we think about that? Because really it's the content that is king, isn't it? Well, the research shows that that's not always the case. Status, even in the modern world of business, is still a thing. Hierarchies are everywhere that we operate. But the biggest change I've noticed in the last 10 years of doing business is that shift on what we mean by status. And I'm going to talk about the shift between social and situational status. And then finally, in this, the collection of five handful of things, the how we communicate. So whether we're assertive or more reflective, all those sort of things. And if that sounds a lot, I'm going to go quick and I'm going to give us a taster, because really what that represents, Eye Opener, is our offering in this complex world of influencing and persuading. But first of all, in chat, so that it's not just listening to me, I'd love you to put a number in chat for me. I'm going to ask you this question. When you meet people for the first time, so you're in a new situation with new people on a project, what's your level of trust? Let me annotate that for you. If you give yourself a one, that doesn't mean that you're the world's biggest cynic, but it just means that life has probably told you at the beginning of things that I'm going to just step back and see how it goes. Equally, if you score yourself as a 10, that doesn't mean that you're the world's most gullible person, that you take everything at face value. It just means that you probably do what you say you're going to do. So why wouldn't everybody else? And if your answer is Simon, it depends, then you can give yourself a five. So 10 is the highest. Yes, it's not up to 100. We're just going to give 10. And this is an art more than a science, but it's when you first meet people. So let's just have a look in the chat what we've got. So we've got Steve, who's an 8. Hello, Ryan. I'm going to come to you. You've given yourself a 3. What gives yourself a 3 on that?
Thanks, Simon. I think for me, I have to get the measure of someone, and trust is earned for me.
Absolutely. It doesn't mean that it can't be earned in Brian's case, but it just means, as you say, that it has to be earned. Hello, Alexander. It's very, very good to have you on board. You've scored yourself higher on an 8, which, considering we've worked together a lot, is good news. Tell us the score of 8. What's behind that?
Sorry, I'm here. I tend to go into a situation thinking with a positive mindset. I'm quite a positive person generally, and I have a positive mindset around thinking that people are going to bring a valuable contribution. and we'll then see how that plays out.
Until proven otherwise. Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks. We'll have one more. Hello, Ellen. You've gone sort of more in the middle around 7. What's behind that?
I think I used to be the other extreme in that people had to build trust with me, but now I think as I've got older, it's I will trust people until they give me cause not to.
Absolutely. Well said. All these answers are right. And please forgive me, because in some ways it's a slightly irritating question because it's arbitrary. Because I ask what happens at the beginning. Probably a better question is whatever end of the scale you're at, what makes you move either way in this subject of trust? And in our conversations with business school students, trust seems to be a really important thing when you're trying to persuade somebody and narrow that gap with the audience. I've heard trust described as something that can walk into a room and very often runs out of it. So is there any wisdom around this? Because trust seems sort of quite a amorphic area of discussion, but is there any wisdom out there? And we have come across that. So what we look at is the work of David Maister. And David Maister, in his book, The Trusted Advisor, summarizes it rather like this. And I wonder if this resonates with anyone. This is the Simple Simon version. What he says is the bits at the top is what adds to trust. So we look at credibility. If you like, that's what shows up before we do. Interestingly, in business, we tend to spend a lot of time telling other people how great we are, not necessarily in an arrogant way, but it's what we do. Actually, the science tells us what's much more effective is when other people tell other people how great we are. So we would be better off if we're looking to build trust in encouraging other people to talk about us rather than doing it ourselves. Maister then goes on to talk about reliability, and he says reliability when you're in a new situation is really important. Sometimes this is misunderstood because it's tempting to think it's about the big stuff. But actually what he implies in his book is particularly early on in a relationship, get the small things right. Answer a email on time, deliver on your expectations, because trust certainly lost if we don't. But the final part on that line is arguably the most interesting. It's a bit of an odd term, intimacy. It sounds potentially something we need to talk to HR about, but that's not what David Maister is talking about. He's talking about professional intimacy. And in a nutshell, what he means by that is the time we spend to get to understand somebody, what makes them tick, what their values are, what their aspirations are, goes a long way in terms of building trust. And for me, it's almost like that great friend that we have who offers great advice, but sometimes we just don't listen to them because we feel they haven't listened to us. Underneath what detracts from trust is this idea of self-interest. And the problem with self-interest is that we all go into a situation. If I run consultative selling sometimes, and of course, when you're selling, you're there for a reason to sell something. But it's when that self-interest becomes negative. And that's when we break trust and we enter the world of manipulation. And much as I've chatted to Vic, Eye Opener, we don't run courses on manipulation, but please feel free to put in chat if that's something that you're interested in. I'm going to leave it there because it's a very wide subject, but it's something that we talk about as something we can do something about. And we encourage the people we work with to do that. Think about how you can turn the dial up on those things. Now, in terms of your target's position, because people come into meetings with us with preconceived ideas, assumptions about us or whatever we're talking about. And we believe they fall into some simple, if you like, boxes, although we try very hard at Ivanhoe not to put people in boxes, but because we only have 20 minutes, why not? What I'd like you to put in chat, though, is because I'm also a trained actor, as is some of your other colleagues who are here, rather than show you a slide, I'd be intrigued to show you what it sounds like. So as you read that, if you like, put in chat who you'd like me to be, an evangelist, neutral, a detractor, and I'll give you an idea and I'll see if you recognize what they sound like. So can I just ask you to put in chat in terms of who you might be dealing with, what interests you in terms of what an evangelist might sound like, versus someone else. So we'll just see what we've got in chat. I can see some people typing away there. Let's just have a look if we've got anyone. So is that Danny? Hi, Danny. Have I pronounced your name correct?
Yep.
Hi, Danny. So an
Hello.
evangelist.
Hmm.
Let's see what they sound like. So there's a couple of types of evangelists. So an evangelist might sound like this. Um, Danny, I think you've come up with a really brilliant idea there. Actually, I think it's long overdue. I'm right behind you. I think it's a brilliant idea. My door's always open. Please, if you need support, come and find me. But I will be at lunch shortly. But anyway, good luck with everything. Now, what do you think about that, Danny? Because that is one form of an evangelist. Is that what you were expecting?
Yes, I've experienced many an evangelist over over my career.
So they're tricky customers, aren't they? They can be very tricky to deal with because it sounds like they're going to really help, but actually, maybe they won't necessarily. I've lost chat. Can somebody, Claudia, can you help me out? Have we got one more from somebody?
Yeah, we've got Ryan, who is a naysayer or says naysayer.
A naysayer. Well, Ryan, I don't know why you would pick on a naysayer because, I've come across this sort of situation before, and this stuff is irrelevant. I mean, thinking about your target's position is irrelevant because the content is all that matters. And I would suggest really you think this through. I'm going to find it very hard to take that on board. Yeah. Now, Ryan, there are some advantages with naysayers because they might be irritating at the time, but why potentially might naysayers be helpful?
I think sometimes their risk aversity, they might have a good lens on something to just push back slightly
Yeah.
without overcommitting.
So the point there is actually naysayers may be difficult to deal with at the time, but at least we know what we're dealing with. And actually, all we encourage our the people that we work with to think about is not just themselves, but think about the position of the people that you're dealing with. Unfortunately, we don't come into meetings wearing T-shirts saying that we are an actor or a naysayer, but actually what we do in our workshops is encourage people to think about the evidence in front of them. How are they speaking? What are they saying? What are the non-verbal clues telling us? Because if you know where someone else is starting from, actually it's easy to join them and adapt our message and the delivery of it to narrow that gap with the audience. I did say though that in terms of sometimes we get overexcited about the ideas that we have. And we do, just to build on that, as well as whether they're an actor, a naysayer, or neutral, just have to think about where they're at. Maybe we're trying to sell an idea that hasn't even crossed their mind, so they're in pre-contemplation. So it's useful to think about where they are in terms of their readiness. But I think in terms of this slide that we often share on our workshops, it's even better just to think about those two questions. Can I do it? And is it worth it? So that's just a little bit about, before we even think about ourselves, think about the other side. Now, what a really odd expression. Does anybody on the call think that they suffer from incongruence on a regular basis? I know we do have some medication for this, but it's not necessarily the language that we often use. But I just want to say this as a warning. We put a lot of credence, quite rightly, on having the right content, the evidence, the data to back up what we want to say and the message we want to get across. But sometimes we let ourselves down unintentionally by the way that we say it. I used to work in finance, and I'm very proud of the fact that I worked in finance, but I did sometimes hear this. Lorraine, I'm really excited to talk about the next 5 years and the strategic plan that we have. I know that it's going to revolutionize the way that the bank operates, and I think it's something that we all should feel very reassured by. Now, here's the thing. There's nothing wrong with the content in that. But Lorraine, how are you feeling? Are you behind the strategy?
I'm not inspired at all, Simon.
which is often unfair because, and I'm only picking on finance people because I'm allowed, because I was one. And what we mean when we run workshops on this idea of do you suffer from incongruence on a regular basis is just that. We have to find a way of meaning what we say. And I'm just going to ask the slightly impertinent question as we come to it. Who is the hardest person, do you think, to ever convince? It's something that we talk about. Please put your answer in chat. I'm just intrigued actually to see what we come up with. But who is the hardest person we ever have to convince before we convince anybody else? I'm just going to stop sharing for a moment and just see what we've got in chat. Who's the hardest person? Not evangelists. I'm just looking at the old on there. Ourselves, absolutely. Angli, ourselves. Yeah, tell us about that. You've put that yourself. So, what happens if we try and persuade somebody else if we haven't persuaded ourselves?
It shows up. So we don't come across authentically. And if you are sharing a message that you don't believe, you can read it in my non-verbals, in how convincing I'm going to be in the words that I use.
Absolutely. So I just offer you this word of caution. In business, I've been in a lot of presentations where I've seen people with good content, but I don't believe them because somehow they don't believe it themselves. So if you want to narrow the gap between you and your audience, one thing is I would just say spend some time convincing yourself before you expect to convince someone else. The beauty of all this stuff is it sounds too simple to matter, but it's the difference between people who are great communicators often and those who have great content but somehow don't make it land. So thank you for that. So we're nearing the closing stages, and as an ex-soldier, if I can't be good, I do like to at least be on time. So we've got 3 minutes left and a couple of things to talk about. Now, this is very much Generation X, my era. It's a sketch from I was going to say the three Ronnies, but it's from the two Ronnies. Don't worry, that wasn't part of the pre-work for what we're doing today. But nevertheless, the headline is, it's the thing that I said I think has changed the most in the last 10 years. And it's how, as a business, we view status. So just as a final thing on this subject, can I just ask you to put in chat what, in your world of business, status means to you? And if you're going to put hierarchy, I think we can help out with the spelling on that. I've learned how to spell that over the time. But without overthinking it, what does that mean to you, this word of status, before I sort of define it? So we've got, thank you, knowledge, credibility, and wisdom. Again, it links with that idea of trust, the backstory. I can see typing facing here. Decision maker. Absolutely. So Danny, again, hello. You've put hierarchy and position. Can you just tell us a little bit more about that? I know what you mean, but how does that show up in your world?
I think there's something about the status that you take or that you have been given. It's not always necessarily earned. But yeah, it's usually around that position that you take up in a space, I think.
Absolutely. Now, I think that positions perfectly this difference between, social and situational status. Social status is about, as Danny puts it, the status that other people give us. But the situation is about the status that the meeting or the situation we're in gives us. And often that is very different. Very often what I'm noticing is the person with the most knowledge and credibility in the room is usually half my age, because the world is moving so fast. But here's the interesting thing. In the world of communication, it's very easy for us to give away our status when we talk too fast, because we think that we're actually not worth the time that we've been given in a presentation. We think if we just hurry up, that'll be all great. We lower our status. Equally, if we don't give much eye contact or we make ourselves a bit small, then we're in danger of not giving ourselves the correct status. And actually what we do is that we elongate the gap between us and our audience. So in the interest of time, I just want to finish where I started. So thank you very much for your attention. I started off saying, you know, is this too much? And I just want to end on this. So really, probably what I should have started with, and just let me share, sorry. What I should have ended with was this. Really, what we've been talking about is a handful of ideas that will help us do this. And maybe what I should have started off by doing was saying, what I'd like to share with you is some ideas on how to shorten distance between you and your audience. Because instead of being too much, really, I just want to leave you with this. Sometimes less really is more. And on that note, I'm going to shut up. Thank you for your time, and I hope we get to work together very soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you very much. So the content that Simon has shared goes into lots of our different workshops as well. We have workshops that are designed just around this. We have them for influencing. We have them for generic communication skills. So thank you very much.